The Kepler 442 research station floated in the darkness between stars like a small metal flower. Its 6 habitat rings rotated slowly, creating artificial gravity for the crew inside. From the observation windows, space looked peaceful and quiet. Inside, it was anything but quiet. Marcus Webb wiped grease from his hands and stared at the reactor display. The numbers looked good. Everything looked good. He had been the chief engineer on this station for 2 years now, and he knew every pipe, every wire, every system like he knew his own heartbeat. The reactor hummed beneath his feet, a constant vibration that he barely noticed anymore. "Engineer Webb, the educational group has arrived," came the voice through his communicator. It was Vixthal, the station's scientific director. The insectoid spoke in clicks and whistles that the translator turned into flat, emotionless words. Marcus smiled. "Tell them I'll be up in 5 minutes. Just finishing the morning checks." He loved when younglings visited the station. It broke up the routine. Most of the alien crew found the visits disruptive, but Marcus always volunteered to give tours. Something about curious young minds asking questions reminded him of his niece back on Earth. She would be about 7 now. He had missed her last birthday. The control room was empty when Marcus arrived. Most of the crew avoided the younglings during visits. Too loud, too unpredictable, too many questions. Marcus found them refreshing. 3 small aliens stood near the main viewport, their guardian hovering nearby. 2 were small reptilian creatures, their scales a bright green that Marcus had learned meant they were excited. The third was an insectoid like Vixthal, but tiny, its carapace still soft and pale. That one would be Vixthal's offspring. "Hello," Marcus said, crouching down to their level. "I'm Marcus. I take care of the engines that keep this station running." The young insectoid clicked something. The translator lag made it seem like the words came from nowhere. "You are the human. My parent says humans are statistically improbable." Marcus laughed. "Your parent is probably right. There aren't many of us out here." He stood and gestured toward the windows. "Want to see something cool?" He led them to the observation deck that overlooked the reactor wing. Through the reinforced glass, they could see the massive containment chamber, glowing with a soft blue light. Energy crackled across magnetic field lines, visible as dancing purple arcs. "That's what powers everything," Marcus explained. "The lights, the air recyclers, the gravity, even the kitchens. It's an exotic matter reactor. Very safe, very stable." One of the reptilian younglings pressed their snout against the glass. "What if it explodes?" "It won't," Marcus said. "We have 17 different safety systems. And even if something went wrong, we have protocols. Everyone would get to the escape pod safely." He believed it when he said it. The station had been operating for 12 years without a serious incident. The reactor was old technology, proven and reliable. Security Chief Coram walked past, his scales a dull brown that meant he was annoyed. "Engineer Webb, the younglings should not be near critical systems. They're behind 6 inches of reinforced transparent aluminum," Marcus said. "Safest place on the station." Coram's tongue flicked out, tasting the air. It was something the reptilian did when he was deciding whether to argue. "Humans have unusual definitions of safety." "Probably," Marcus agreed cheerfully. After the tour, Marcus returned to engineering. His assistant, a blob-like creature named Solix, was checking the secondary systems. Solix communicated through color changes on their translucent skin, and right now they were flashing a calm blue. "Everything normal?" Marcus asked. Solix rippled green. Yes, Marcus pulled up the reactor diagnostics on his main screen. He had been monitoring a small fluctuation in the containment field for the past week. Nothing serious, just a minor variance in the magnetic field strength. It happened sometimes as the exotic matter aged. He had scheduled maintenance for next month. The number on his screen flickered. 0.003% deviation, within normal parameters. He made a note in the log and moved on to checking the life support systems. In the station's common area, Vixthal was having tea with 2 other researchers. The insectoid noticed Marcus and waved him over with one of their multiple limbs. "Engineer Webb, join us. We were discussing human irrationality." Marcus grabbed a coffee from the dispenser and sat down. "My favorite topic." "What did I do this time?" "Nothing specific," Vixthal clicked. "We were analyzing the human response to the Rigel 7 disaster. When the colony was being evacuated, several humans ran back into the danger zone. The statistical analysis shows they had a 96% probability of death. Yet they went anyway. They were getting people out, Marcus said. Yes, but the calculations showed more lives would be lost by the rescue attempts than saved. It was mathematically inefficient. Marcus sipped his coffee. Math doesn't know everything. An interesting perspective from an engineer, Vixthal observed. Your profession is built on mathematics. My profession is built on keeping people alive, Marcus corrected. Math is just one of the tools. The other researchers, both from species Marcus couldn't quite identify, made sounds that the translator rendered as disapproving murmurs. One of them spoke up. This is why humans are considered unpredictable in crisis scenarios. You do not follow optimal survival strategies. Maybe we define survival differently, Marcus said. He finished his coffee and excused himself. These conversations always went in circles. The other species on the station were brilliant, logical, efficient. They made decisions based on data and probability. Marcus respected that. But sometimes he wondered if they understood the difference between living and surviving. Back in his quarters that night, Marcus recorded a message for his sister on Earth. He told her about the youngling's visit, about how the little insectoid had asked if the reactor could explode. He told her he missed his niece and hoped she was doing well in school. He did not mention the small fluctuation in the reactor. There was nothing to mention. It was routine. Marcus fell asleep to the sound of the station creaking around him, the reactor humming below, and the endless silence of space pressing in from all sides. He dreamed of Earth, of gravity that came from a planet instead of rotation, of wind that was created by weather instead of air recyclers. In the dream, his niece was calling to him, but he could not find her. The reactor fluctuation increased by 0.001% while he slept. Still within normal parameters, still nothing to worry about. The station computer logged it automatically and moved on to monitoring the 1,000 other systems that kept 97 beings alive in the void between stars. In the morning, Marcus would run his usual checks. The younglings would finish their visit and return to their homeworlds. Life would continue as normal. The universe, Marcus had learned, did not give warnings. It did not send messages or signals. When things went wrong, they went wrong fast, but that would be tomorrow's problem. Tonight, the station slept and everything was fine. The alarm woke Marcus from a dead sleep, not the gentle chime that meant a shift change or a minor system alert. This was the sound that every person on every space station feared. The evacuation klaxon, a harsh repeating blare that made his heart jump into his throat. He was moving before his mind fully caught up. Training took over. Suit on seals checked. Communicator active. He was running toward engineering before he had time to think about what might be happening. The corridors were full of crew members, all heading in the opposite direction, toward the escape pods. Their faces showed various alien expressions, but Marcus had been in space long enough to recognize fear in any species. What's the situation? Marcus shouted into his communicator as he ran. Solix's voice came back, translated from their color language into flat digital speech. Containment failure. Cascade reaction in the exotic matter core. Projection shows total breach in 4.3 minutes. 4 minutes. Marcus felt his stomach drop. 4 minutes until the reactor tore itself apart and took the station with it. He burst into engineering. The room was chaos. Alarms screaming from every console. Red lights flashing. The deck vibrated beneath his feet, an irregular shudder that meant the containment fields were failing. Solix was at the main console, their body flashing rapid sequences of red and orange. Bad, very bad, can we stop it? Marcus asked, already knowing the answer. Negative. The cascade is self-sustaining. Magnetic containment at 42% and falling. We must evacuate. Marcus pulled up the diagnostics. His hands moved across the controls with practiced speed, but every number he saw confirmed what Solix had said. The small fluctuation he had been monitoring had not been small. It had been a symptom of a deeper problem in the exotic matter itself, a problem that had finally reached critical mass. The reactor was going to explode. Nothing could stop it. Go, Marcus told Solix. Get to the pods. Solix flashed a color Marcus did not recognize. Confusion, maybe. You are not coming? Right behind you. I need to initiate the emergency protocols. Buy everyone more time. Go, now. Solix rippled with uncertainty but moved toward the door. Marcus watched them leave, then turned back to his console. His fingers flew across the controls. He triggered emergency venting protocols, buying maybe another 30 seconds. He diverted all available power to the containment fields, buying another minute. It was like trying to hold back an ocean with his hands, but every second mattered. The station's security feeds were still active on his secondary screen. He glanced at them, watching the crew evacuate in an orderly fashion. Coram was at the pod bay, directing traffic with military efficiency. Vixthal was there too, ushering researchers into pods. Then Marcus saw something that made his blood turn to ice. On one of the feeds, in the observation deck near the reactor wing, 3 small shapes huddled behind a blast door. The younglings! Somehow, in the chaos, they had been separated from their guardian. The door had automatically sealed when the emergency began, following safety protocols. Those protocols were designed to contain reactor breaches, not to protect anyone inside the containment zone. The younglings were trapped on the wrong side of the blast door. They were in the section that would be vaporized when the reactor went critical. Marcus switched his view to the pod bay cameras. He saw Vixthal suddenly freeze. The insectoid was looking at a data pad, mandibles clicking rapidly. Vixthal had just realized where their offspring was. The insectoid ran toward a control panel, trying to override the blast door. Coram intercepted them, grabbing Vixthal with strong hands. "Let me go." Vixthal's translated voice was breaking. "My offspring. I must..." "The probability of successful rescue is 2.3%, Coram said. His voice was level, factual. "You will die. They will still die. We must preserve the survivors." Marcus watched Vixthal struggle, watched Coram hold firm, watched the clock count down. 3 minutes and 40 seconds. He pulled up the calculations himself. Coram was right. The distance to the observation deck, the sealed blast doors, the radiation levels already climbing in that section. Anyone who tried to reach them would die, and they probably would not get there in time anyway. The younglings would die alone and afraid. The math was clear. Marcus looked at the screen showing the evacuation. Everyone was following protocol. Everyone was making the logical choice. The choice that would save the most lives. Everyone was running away from the reactor. Marcus Webb closed his eyes. He saw his niece's face, heard his mother's voice singing lullabies, remembered the feeling of being small and scared and needing someone to make things okay. He opened his eyes. The numbers on his screen meant nothing. The probabilities meant nothing. There were children behind that door. Marcus turned and ran toward the reactor. "Engineer Webb, your biosign is moving in the incorrect direction," the station computer said calmly. Marcus did not answer. He was too busy running. In the pod bay, someone noticed. "What is the human doing?" one of the researchers asked. They all looked at their data pads, at the tracking systems that showed the location of every crew member. One dot was moving away from the pods, moving toward the reactor core. "He's going after them," someone whispered. The pod bay fell silent except for the alarm. 94 beings stopped moving and stared at their screens. Watched one small dot move deeper into the station, toward the heart of the catastrophe. Vixthal stopped struggling against Coram's grip. "Why, the calculation shows..." Why would anyone... Coram's scales had gone pale, a color Marcus had once told him meant fear in reptilian species. "I do not know." Marcus's voice crackled over the open channel. He was breathing hard, running at full speed. "Someone needs to make sure all the pods launch on time. Don't wait for me." "Engineer Webb, the probability of success is..." Coram began. "I don't care about the probability," Marcus said. His voice was steady despite the running. "They're kids. I'm getting them out." The channel went quiet. Then Solix's translated voice, small and confused. "But you will die." "Probably," Marcus agreed. "But they won't. Not if I can help it. Now shut up and let me concentrate." 3 minutes left. On 94 datapads, crew members watched a human's biosign move deeper into impossible danger. They watched, and they did not understand. But they would remember. In the observation deck, the 3 younglings huddled together in the darkness, feeling the station shake around them. They did not know help was coming. They did not know someone had looked at the impossible math and decided it did not matter. They only knew they were scared, and they wanted to go home. 2 minutes and 40 seconds remained. Marcus had never been so scared in his life. His suit sensors screamed warnings at him with every step. Radiation levels climbing, structural integrity failing, temperature rising beyond safe limits. The corridor ahead was lit only by emergency lights, casting everything in red shadows. The station groaned around him like a dying animal. He was absolutely terrified. His hands shook. His heart hammered so hard it hurt. Every instinct in his body told him to turn around, to run the other way, to save himself. He kept running forward. The first blast door was sealed. Marcus had expected that. He pulled the emergency override panel open and manually triggered the release. Precious seconds ticked away as the hydraulics slowly ground the door open. His suit told him he had 2 minutes and 15 seconds. The door opened enough for him to squeeze through. The corridor beyond was worse. A pipe had burst, venting superheated coolant across the floor. Marcus jumped over it, felt the heat even through his suit. A crack ran along one wall where the station's frame was beginning to buckle. Marcus. It was Vixthal's voice on the communicator. The younglings are alive. I can see them on the security feed. But you, the radiation levels where you are. I know, Marcus said. He did not have breath for more words. He was running at full speed, his lungs burning. The exposure will kill you, Vixtal said. Even if you reach them. Even if you get them out. The dosage you are receiving is already... I know, Marcus said again. He had seen the numbers on his suit display. He had already absorbed enough radiation to kill him. Slowly, maybe, but certainly. And he was heading into worse. None of that mattered. A memory hit him as he ran. He was 7 years old, small for his age, scared of the dark. His mother sat by his bed, holding his hand, singing to him. An old song, passed down through generations. Something about stars and sleep and being safe. He had felt safe then. Protected. Like nothing bad could happen because someone bigger and stronger was watching over him. Those younglings were feeling the exact opposite right now, alone, abandoned, waiting for death in the dark. Not on his watch. The second blast door took longer. The override controls were damaged. Marcus had to rip the panel open and manually splice the wires. His hands were shaking badly now. Not just from fear. The radiation was affecting his nervous system. He could taste metal in his mouth. 1 minute 40 seconds, the station computer announced calmly. Shut up, Marcus muttered. He connected 2 wires. The door lurched, moved half a meter, and stopped. Jammed. The gap was barely wide enough for him. He pushed through, felt the metal scrape against his suit, heard a tear. His suit's integrity alarm went from yellow to red. The radiation counter spun higher. The observation deck was just ahead. He could see the door, could see the small shapes through the transparent aluminum window. They saw him too. The younglings pressed against the glass, their small faces showing fear and hope. I'm here, Marcus said. Not sure if they could hear him. I'm getting you out. This door was worse. The frame had warped from the heat and stress. The override did nothing. Marcus looked at his suit readout. 1 minute 10 seconds, he looked at the younglings. They were so small. The insectoid was clicking frantically, trying to communicate. The 2 reptilians had their arms wrapped around each other. Marcus made a decision. He grabbed a heavy tool from his belt, one designed for working on external hull panels. He swung it at the door's hinges. Once, twice, the metal groaned. 3 times. 4. The hinge cracked. Webb, what are you doing? Coram's voice on the communicator. That door is structural. If you compromise it, doesn't matter, Marcus grunted. He swung again. Whole section's going to be vapor in 60 seconds anyway. The hinge broke. The door sagged. Marcus grabbed it and pulled with all his strength. His muscles screamed. Something in his shoulder tore. The door moved, just enough. The younglings scrambled through the gap. They were making sounds, high-pitched and frightened. The universal sound of terrified children. It's okay, Marcus said. He tried to make his voice calm, even though his suit was telling him he had 55 seconds left to live. I've got you. You're safe now. He picked up the smallest one, the insectoid. It was heavier than it looked. The 2 reptilians grabbed onto his legs, their claws digging through his suit. Marcus started running back the way he had come. It was harder now. The younglings were heavy. His body was failing. The radiation had moved beyond dangerous into lethal. His suit's medical systems were injecting him with every kind of stimulant and anti-radiation drug they had, trying to keep him moving. 40 seconds. The corridor seemed longer going back. Each step felt like moving through thick mud. The younglings were crying now, making sounds that did not need translation. They were scared. They wanted their parents. They wanted to be safe. Marcus's mother used to sing to him. What was that song? He could barely remember the words, but he started singing anyway, his voice rough and breathless. The tune was simple, something about stars. The younglings quieted a little, listening to the strange sounds. 30 seconds. He squeezed through the second blast door. The younglings whimpered as the metal scraped against them, but he got them through. He kept singing the same verse over and over because he could not remember the rest. 20 seconds, the first blast door was ahead. Through it, down one more corridor, the pod bay. Safety. Life. Home. Marcus could barely feel his legs. His vision was starting to blur. The suit was running out of drugs to give him. His body was shutting down, radiation destroying cells faster than they could repair. 10 seconds. He stumbled through the blast door. The pod bay was ahead. He could see the lights, could see the open pod doors, could see Vixthal standing at the entrance, mandibles open in shock. 5 seconds. Marcus reached the pod bay. His legs gave out. He fell to his knees, still holding the younglings. Vixthal rushed forward, taking the small insectoid. Corum grabbed the two reptilians. Get them in a pod, Marcus gasped. Launch now. You too, Vixthal said. There is room. You must. Marcus looked at his suit display. The launch systems were failing. Someone needed to stay at the manual controls. Someone needed to trigger the sequence from outside. 3 seconds. He looked at the younglings. They were staring at him with wide eyes. Afraid but alive. Go, Marcus said. He pushed himself up, stumbled to the manual control panel. Get them out of here, Vixthal understood. The insectoid's mandibles clicked in a way that needed no translation. Grief. No, there must be another way. We can— No time, Marcus said. His hands found the controls. Tell them it's okay. They're going home. 2 seconds, he hit the launch button. The pod doors sealed. He could see the younglings through the window, pressed against the glass. Vixthal was holding them, trying to shield them from seeing. 1 second. The pod launched, shooting away from the station. Marcus watched it go, watched it clear the danger zone. Safe. They were safe. The reactor exploded. The last thing Marcus saw was light, bright and beautiful, filling everything. The last thing he felt was satisfied. He had done it. They were safe. The evacuation ships floated in the darkness, a safe distance from where the station had been. On their view screens, the crew watched the reactor explosion bloom like a brief new star. Purple and white light expanded, consuming the station in seconds. Then it faded, leaving nothing but debris and silence. Inside the ships, nobody spoke. On the command vessel, Corum stood at the main display. His scales had gone completely white, a color his species showed only in extreme emotional distress. He stared at the screen where, moments ago, a small indicator had shown Marcus Webb's biosign. Now there was nothing, just empty space where a human had been. Biosign terminated, the computer announced. Chief Engineer Marcus Webb is deceased. Vixthal made a sound that the translators could not interpret. The insectoid collapsed onto the deck, their multiple limbs folding beneath them. They were holding their offspring, the small insectoid that Marcus had carried through radiation and fire. The youngling was clicking softly, confused and frightened. The two reptilian younglings huddled against each other nearby, their scales showing colors that meant shock and grief even in their young minds. A researcher named Tholvar, who had worked with Marcus for 2 years, spoke into the silence. I do not understand. The probability of successful rescue was calculated at 2.3%. He knew this. We all knew this. Why would any rational being— He was not rational, Corum said quietly. His voice sounded strange, hollow. That is what we always said about humans, that they do not follow logical threat assessment, that they make inefficient choices in crisis scenarios. But this was not inefficient, Solix said, their colors flashing confused patterns. He saved 3 lives. The ratio is meaningless, Vixthal interrupted. The insectoid's voice was breaking, the clicks coming irregularly. He saved them. He saved my offspring. He saved these younglings, but he knew he would die. He calculated it. He saw the same numbers we did, and he went anyway. The youngest researcher on board, a being named Plix who had joined the station only 3 months ago, asked the question they were all thinking. But why? What possible evolutionary advantage does this behavior provide? Why would a species develop such Irrationality, offered Tholvar. Heroism, Vixthal said softly. The word hung in the air. It was a human word, one that did not translate well into most galactic languages. Most species had concepts of bravery, of facing danger for survival or for one's own offspring. But this was different. Marcus had not been saving his own genetic line. He had not been acting to preserve his own species. He had died for younglings who were not human, who he had known for less than a day with no expectation of reward or recognition. "We need to report this to the Galactic Coalition," Coram said. He seemed to be struggling to maintain his professional composure. "They need to know what happened here. They need to understand what the human did." "Do you understand it?" asked Plix. Coram was quiet for a long moment. "No," he finally admitted. "I have studied human behavior for years. I have read their literature, analyzed their history, learned their languages, but I do not understand this. I do not understand how a being can look at certain death and choose it willingly for strangers." On another screen, security footage played on repeat. Someone had pulled it from the station's final data transmission. It showed Marcus in the corridor carrying the younglings, his body clearly failing. And it had audio. They listened to the human singing. It was off-key and breathless, interrupted by coughing and gasping. But it was gentle, clearly meant to soothe. The younglings had quieted when they heard it, some instinct telling them that this sound meant safety, meant protection. "What is he singing?" Solix asked. Vixthal, who had studied human culture more than most, translated. "It is a lullaby, a song humans sing to their offspring to calm them. Something about stars and sleep, about being watched over, about being safe." The words made it worse somehow. Marcus had been dying, his body destroyed by radiation, and he had used his last breaths to comfort children who were not his own. The small insectoid youngling clicked something. Vixthal listened, then translated. "They want to know where the human is. They want to say thank you." Vixthal held their offspring closer, mandibles clicking in the pattern that meant grief and love and loss. "The human is gone, little one. He gave his life so you could live." The youngling clicked again, confused. The concept did not make sense to their young mind. Why would someone do that? Vixthal had no answer. In the days that followed, as the survivors were transported to the nearest station, the questions continued. The crew analyzed Marcus's actions from every angle. They ran simulations, calculated probabilities, tried to find the logical framework that would explain his choice. They found none. One researcher suggested that Marcus had miscalculated the danger, had believed he could survive. They reviewed his suit logs. He had known exactly how much radiation he was absorbing. He had known, second by second, what it was doing to his body. Another suggested that humans had a genetic defect, a flaw in their survival instincts. But that did not explain why humanity had thrived, had built civilizations, had reached the stars. Coram proposed a theory during one of their many discussions. Perhaps it is not a flaw. Perhaps it is a feature. Humans evolved on a dangerous world. They were not the strongest or fastest. They survived by working together, by protecting their group. Maybe that instinct became so strong that it extended beyond their own species. But the cost, Tholvar protested, the cost to the individual is too high. Natural selection should eliminate such behavior. Unless, Vixthal said slowly, the behavior benefits the species even if it harms the individual. A species where every member will sacrifice themselves for younglings, even younglings not their own, is a species that ensures its young survive. And survival of the young means survival of the species. It was a theory. It made some sense. But it still did not answer the real question. How could any being know they were about to die and not turn away? The rescued younglings were examined by medical staff, given therapy, checked for trauma. Physically, they were fine. Marcus had shielded them from the worst of the radiation. Emotionally, they were confused. They kept asking about the human who had sang to them, who had carried them, who had smelled of fear but whose hands had been steady. One of the reptilian younglings, when asked what they remembered most, said something the translators rendered as, "He was scared. I could smell it. But he did not run away from us. He ran toward us." Why did he run toward us when he was scared? No one had an answer a child could understand. 3 months later, a formal inquiry was scheduled. The Galactic Coalition wanted a full report on the incident. They wanted to understand what had happened, to learn from it, to perhaps develop new safety protocols. But more than that, They wanted to understand the human, because Marcus Webb had done something that the galaxy had never seen before. He had rewritten the equation of survival. He had proven that there were some beings in the universe who would not run from death when children needed saving. And the galaxy did not know what to do with that information. The Galactic Coalition Council Chamber was designed to hold representatives from 500 species. Today it was full. Every seat was occupied. Every view screen was active. Beings from across the galaxy had come to hear the testimony about Kepler 442. Vixthal stood at the center platform, mandibles clicking nervously. The insectoid had never spoken before the full council before. Behind Vixthal, displayed on massive screens, were the schematics of the destroyed station, the radiation readings, the timeline of the evacuation, and a photograph of Marcus Webb smiling taken a month before the disaster. "We have analyzed the incident for 87 days, Vixthal began. The translator carried their voice to every corner of the chamber. "We have reviewed every decision, every action, every piece of data. We have run 1,423 simulations, and we have concluded that Chief Engineer Marcus Webb's choice was, by all rational models, nonsensical." A murmur went through the chamber. Council members shifted, scales rustling, tentacles writhing, appendages twitching. "He sacrificed peak genetic material," Vixthal continued. "Himself, an expert engineer, a being with years of training and experience, for 3 immature specimens of other species. The cost-benefit analysis is clear. His death represented a greater loss to galactic society than 3 younglings who had not yet contributed." Vixthal paused. When they spoke again, their voice was different, softer. "That is what our analysis says. But it is wrong. Because my offspring is alive, because 2 other younglings went home to their families, because Marcus Webb looked at an impossible situation and decided that mathematics did not matter." Coram stepped forward to join Vixthal. The security chief's scales were still pale, still showing the trauma of that day. "I restrained researcher Vixthal during the evacuation. I told them their offspring was already lost. I made the correct tactical decision, the logical decision, and I will regret it for the rest of my life." Coram's voice was steady, but his scales flickered with emotion. "Because a human did what I could not. He saw the same numbers I did, the same probabilities, and he decided they were meaningless. He decided that 3 frightened younglings were worth any cost." "But how?" A council member from the collective of rational thought spoke up. Their mechanical voice synthesized. "How does a being override basic survival instinct? We have studied human psychology. They feel fear. They have self-preservation drives. Yet time and again they ignore these drives when younglings are in danger. Not just their own species younglings. Any younglings." "We have documentation," Coram said. He gestured and the screens changed. They showed image after image. Human firefighters carrying children from burning buildings. Human teachers shielding students during attacks. Human strangers diving into rivers, into collapsed structures, into impossible danger. Always for children. Often not even their own species, when humans served on mixed-species stations. "This is not an isolated incident," Coram continued. "This is a pattern. Humans do not calculate whether children are worth saving. They do not run simulations or check probability matrices. They simply act." The council chamber was silent. 500 species, representing the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy, struggled to understand. A counselor from the Zephix Empire, a species known for their advanced mathematics, asked the question they all wanted answered. But what evolutionary pressure creates this behavior? What advantage does it provide? Before anyone could answer, a door at the side of the chamber opened. A human woman walked in, her uniform marking her as an admiral in Earth's Coalition Fleet. Admiral Chen. She moved with the confidence of someone who had walked into many hostile rooms and walked out unharmed. "If I may," she said. Her voice was calm, almost casual. "I can answer that question." The council speaker gestured for her to continue. Admiral Chen stood next to Marcus's photograph. She looked at it for a moment and something sad crossed her face. "You are asking the wrong question. You are looking for evolutionary advantage, for logical framework, for mathematical reasoning. But this is not about math. This is about humanity." She gestured to the screens. "My species evolved on a world that tried to kill us every single day. We were not the strongest. We were not the fastest. We did not have claws or venom or armored skin. What we had was each other, and we had our children. Admiral Chen's voice grew stronger. Every child that survived was a victory against a universe that did not care if we lived or died. Every child raised to adulthood was proof that we could endure. So we developed an instinct not in our genes but in our culture, in our very souls. We protect children. All children. Not because it is logical. Not because it is efficient. Because it is right. But the cost, the Zephix counselor began. The cost is irrelevant, Admiral Chen said flatly. You are trying to put a price on a child's life. Humans do not do that. Cannot do that. When Marcus Webb saw those younglings trapped, he did not calculate probabilities. He saw children who needed help. That was the only calculation that mattered. She pulled up a new image. It showed the 3 rescued younglings, now safe, now healing. You want to know what advantage this behavior provides? Look at them. 3 beings who will grow up, who will contribute to society, who will have lives and families of their own. That is the advantage. Not to Marcus Webb, not to humanity. To the universe itself. Vixthal clicked in agreement. The human gave his life so that future could exist. He did not know these younglings. He would never see them grow. He would receive no benefit, no reward, no recognition. He did it because someone had to. Because it was the right thing to do. The council was quiet for a long time. Finally, the speaker addressed Admiral Chen. We have studied the incident. We have reviewed your species' history, and we have concluded that humans are unpredictable in crisis scenarios. Dangerously so. Many species are reluctant to serve alongside humans because of this unpredictability. Admiral Chen smiled. It was not a happy smile. I know, I have read the reports. Humans are irrational. Humans do not follow proper survival protocols. Humans cannot be relied upon to make logical decisions. She gestured to Marcus's photo. This man ran into a melting reactor core to save children who were not his own species. If you call that irrational, you are correct. If you call it illogical, you are correct. But if you call it wrong, then we have nothing more to discuss. The chamber erupted. Some counselors clicked or chirped in agreement. Others showed signs of distress or confusion. The debate raged for hours. In the end, no consensus was reached. Some species concluded that humans were too unpredictable to serve in critical positions. Others requested more human personnel on their stations, reasoning that if disaster struck, they wanted someone who would not calculate probabilities before helping. The galaxy remained divided on the question of human irrationality. But 6 months later, on the human vessel HFY Defiance, a ceremony was held. The ship's rescuers' wall, where the names of those who died saving others were inscribed, received a new addition. Chief Engineer Marcus Webb, Kepler 442 Research Station. Casualty classification, predictably human. 3 younglings attended the ceremony, brought by their families as honored guests. The small insectoid, Vixthal's offspring, had been studying human language and culture. They stepped forward and touched Marcus's name on the wall, their young mandibles clicking carefully. Thank you, they said in halting English. You saved us. You sang to us. We remember. The 2 reptilian younglings, older now and braver, added their own words. They had chosen human names as their middle names, Marcus, both of them, to honor the being who had valued their lives more than his own. Admiral Chen watched from the side of the room. She had known Marcus slightly, had served with him years ago. She remembered him as competent, cheerful, occasionally irreverent. A good engineer, a good man. She had not been surprised by what he did. Not really, because she knew humans, knew what they were capable of when children needed saving. The galaxy called it irrational, called it illogical, called it unpredictable. Humans called it Tuesday. The youngest of the rescued younglings, the insectoid who now called themselves Vix Marcus in honor of both their parent and their savior, enrolled in Earth's Coalition Engineering Academy. They wanted to understand the machines that kept space stations running. They wanted to learn what Marcus had known, but more than that, they wanted to understand the choice Marcus had made. The choice that defied logic and probability and self-preservation. On their first day at the academy, their instructor asked why they wanted to be an engineer. Vix Marcus clicked carefully, making sure the translator would catch every word. Because an engineer named Marcus taught me that some equations cannot be solved with mathematics. Some problems can only be solved with courage, and some decisions are not about probability. They are about what is right. The instructor, a grizzled human veteran, smiled. You will do well here, kid. You already understand the most important lesson. Years later, when Vix Marcus graduated top of their class, they wrote in their personal journal, in carefully practiced English, "Today I learned that humans have many words for what Marcus did. Heroism, sacrifice, courage. But they use another word too, one that seems casual but